Word of mouth is huge. They're
Mm.
going to leave, and the biggest thing that happens is they're going to go and tell 10 people how bad it was.
Welcome to this week's episode of Beauty Babble. Today, we're talking about how to handle dissatisfied clients. Unfortunately, it's a reality of the service industry. Regardless, right? What services you provide, we're going to have dissatisfied clients at some point. And so, Suzanne and I today decided to talk a little bit more about that. How are you doing, Suzanne?
I'm really good. I'm enjoying the summer. It's really hot. And this is a topic that I'm really glad we're covering because actually it's been coming up, I think, a little bit more and more. Unfortunately, this is never going to go away. And I think hopefully some ideas that we have will help you to prevent this happening. And not always can you prevent it. Because a lot of times we don't know what's going on in their heads when they arrive into the treatment room, right?
Yeah. I think too, like, it's going to happen. How do you handle it? Right? Because sometimes, you know, that saying, like, you can't make everybody happy. It's the truth. And there are ways that you can address a situation and then learn from it so that in the future you could be more preventative. But unfortunately, yeah, like sometimes you're just going to have to face it head on as it's happening. Why don't we kick
Yeah.
it off by talking about ways that you can tell if your client is dissatisfied? Because there's two types of clients, right? There's going to be the one that will tell you, but there's also going to be the client who won't say anything. But you mentioned this earlier about body language and being able to tell when somebody is not having a good time in your service or a good experience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that that quiet person not really engaging in that conversation, when you have that client, I mean, we all know the one that's like, "Oh my god, I just love you. What would I do without you? You're amazing. Do whatever you want with me." Like, those are just like, "Oh my god, those are the best." And there's such a great ego boost, and this is why you're doing this in the industry. Then you have the one where they're a little quiet and you're checking in with them. Let's say, how are you doing? Are you, whatever service you're doing with them? And like, yeah, like they just don't respond in
Mhm.
the way that you're hoping. And then sometimes we get in our own heads. So is it because, I don't know, you're doing a facial and they're relaxing? Or they're waxing and it hurts, so they're really focused on trying to disengage themselves from the situation. So I think with their body language is another one. When you ask them a question, can they look you in the eye or do they avoid you? Are they shying away from it? Like you think of a child when you ask them a question, they're shy and they don't want to talk to you. Like look at their body language. They're telling you they're not comfortable
Mhm.
with what you're asking them. That doesn't matter their age. People in their body language will tell you if you're watching. And this is something I know that there's no training. Like you just learn to do the service that you're providing and they don't dive into how to deal with people. And I think the body language, I mean, well, that's what, 80% of communication.
Yeah.
So
And I think
it's
too,
huge.
that's big because you will have the clients that are just quiet. Like they're quiet personality. It's just the way some people are. And I
Mhm.
think of like if like when I was doing a pedicure, I'd have some clients who would be sitting back, eyes closed. Yeah, like that to me is somebody who's quiet and doesn't want, or they're reading their book, but they're completely relaxed. But then you've had the clients who are just sitting there looking at what you're doing, kind of, their body's a little bit more tensed up,
Yeah.
right? Like there are certain things. And listen, it could be like you never know what is happening in somebody's day. And this is like the tipping point. But I think it's just being able to address, like recognize when
Be
some,
aware.
yeah, when somebody just
Mhm.
seems like they're not in a good place and just checking in. I mean, it could be something else, but how about asking questions and finding out that will take you another step into your customer service as well, right?
Yeah. And fairness, this comes with experience too. I was going to use a pedicure example because they're usually the best.
Yeah, they are.
Right? You can tell if they're engaged in conversation or don't want to talk. That's number
Yeah.
one. But then how do you figure out, are they happy or not? I had a scenario too where it was two people together, they were friends, or maybe mother daughter, can't remember, but there was two together. And my client had, and I think I probably talked about this already, red polish and just kept putting coats over top of it and never used a base coat. And my colleague's person had nothing, like I think a clear, light, opaly kind of shimmer. And it was from her last pedicure. So obviously there was a base coat. She took that off in 2 minutes. 20 minutes later, I am dealing with this red polish.
Red polish is the
And
worst.
and I could tell this lady was starting to tense up. You can feel it. And that's part of the thing of this industry is the touch, right? You can tell when someone's not very happy. And then I'm like going deep inside, I'm like, oh, can't believe you came in here like this. Geez, this is going to take me forever. I'm already behind. How am I going to keep up and look like we try to work
Mhm.
really hard to keep them looking the same at the same pace so they don't feel they're getting a different service because she was watching and I could tell right away.
Yeah.
And so I checked in with her. I said, how are you doing? And I'm really sorry. It's just taking me a little longer to remove your polish. I really need to make sure it's all off so I can do a really good job. So bear with me, type of thing. And her friend said, yeah, what kind of polish is that? Mine just comes off so easy. Yours just stuck on. I thought, thank God. She goes,
Yeah.
how long has she been doing that on you? Like it was, so the other client saved me. But this client started off in a negative way and she kept that way throughout the service and I could feel it.
Mhm.
So I checked in. I said, how are you doing? I said, is there something I can get you? Would you like a tea? Do you drink tea? Anything I could do to keep offering. And it wasn't every 5 minutes. It was just checking in.
Mhm.
And then I grabbed her feet and I remember squeezing them. And I just looked at her. I said, okay, I want you to just take a breath. I need you to relax. You're really tense. Can you
Mhm.
relax? Are you a person that can relax? And she's like, oh, and then she, I think, was surprised that I could read it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you guys know what I mean. When you're listening to this, you can tell when someone's not like working with you, as you're moving your feet, you're fighting the whole time. Right. And so she's like, okay, yeah, yeah, it's fine. And then, I could see that she felt off. And then I'm now going, okay, I need to prevent. Right away, I went into preventative action, right? It's from the beginning. And I think that's when we talk about reading somebody. She's going to complain that she's feeling gypped because they're going to finish at the same time. I'm going to make that happen. Pretty darn close.
Mhm.
Knowing that, I went, I'm going to have to extend this a bit longer to prevent the complaint. You got to read it. I'll just
Yeah.
have to move her to another room while her polish dries. Or I'll have her put on flip flops and we're going to go to another room. I'll polish you there because we need the room, because we needed the room, right? And I'm going to finish you there if you don't mind. I'm really sorry. It just took me longer to remove the polish. I'm going to put it back on her for that one.
I
Do you know
think
what I
that
mean? Without
communication
being
is really important.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that's an example. But I think it's also too, like when we talk about, so what if I didn't do it? And then she does actually complain. You first off, you got to stay calm. Inside, we're like, oh my God, they're really upset. And sometimes they throw you off and you think it's gone really well. Those are
Mhm.
situations that happen. So you have to, step out of yourself almost. And it's not about you. Like just figure out the situation you're dealing with. Try not to take it personal. I mean, there's a lot of entrepreneurs here, solo entrepreneurs. So you don't have a manager to bounce it off of. It's
Yeah.
you, right? So you need to stay calm, show empathy, don't stand rigid and mad in your face. Like they can read you too,
Yeah, be aware of your own body
of your
language.
own body language.
Yeah.
Many times it's like, I just, when you feel empathy for someone, I know myself, I put my hands in front and I just say, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Like you genuinely have to do you. You can't fake it. But what
Mhm.
do you do when you hear someone, I don't know, your best friend just gave you the most horrible news and you're face to face? Do you stand there rigid and look at them all like brows down and perked lips? And no, you're like, oh my God, like you automatically change your views, right? Like your body language. And I think that's a huge part is showing the empathy of it, even though you did an amazing job.
Well, I think because it's a service base. It is hard not to take it personally because it is something you did. You did a service and then they are not. But I think that a really important thing that I try not to do, or have tried not to do, is to justify or explain why I did what I did, regardless of whether I had a good reason behind it. Like your pedicure example, like you had to take the time to take off that red polish. It doesn't matter. What
Yeah,
matters is that you like start off by apologizing, saying, I'm really sorry.
you need to validate.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And then listen, like tell me about, so I think it's just, don't try to say, I'm sorry, but I had to take off your polish, or you know what I'm saying? Like, just say,
Absolutely.
I'm
So I'm
really
so sorry
sorry.
you yeah,
This is, my main goal is to, have you be satisfied and walk out of here happy. And how can I make this better? Or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
not just, do not justify yourself, because that just becomes a defensive argument. And at the end of the day, I say this to people about communications and being online. It's really not about you. It's about your customer. It's about your client. So
Mhm.
listen to them and then give them what they need.
Well, what
It's
do we
within
always
reason.
say? The customer is almost always right,
Yeah.
but in the end, you got to make them feel like they're always right. And that's a
Ex-
hard one, and I get it. And you need to have, like, you need to be really clever, smart, intuitive when you're dealing with someone. If you think you're flipping this, I mean, I have a scenario that I had with a nail, and she called in, and I probably shared this story because it's still vivid. It was one of the worst experiences I've seen a staff go through. And at the front desk, same thing. And she wanted a nail tech, and our senior tech was unavailable. She's booked, but I did say we have a junior tech, and I had to tell staff this. Listen, we have to distinguish you as a junior tech because you need more time. There could things go wrong, and it's not to demean you. It's just to help save the situation. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? These things. And this lady was really upset. This poor girl, she worked for 2 hours on this lady's gel nails. And I'm telling you, I thought they were great. But the lady used the junior tech thing. She says, I'm not happy. She doesn't know what she's doing. And I said, oh, I said, that's interesting that you feel that way. Why do you feel that way? Well, look at them. And she called them chiclet. Some of you don't know what chiclets are, but Google it. You'll see. And they weren't. They were really good. I said, oh, I said, well, she says, I just really wanted the senior tech. I said, if you got the senior tech, those are the nails you would have. See, look at mine. You don't like these? She goes, well, that's not the point. She kept fighting. Anyway, so listening to her, I said, I'm really sorry that you're not happy. Let's go in the room. It won't take long. We're going to remove them. Oh, well, that's unnecessary. I just want a refund. And I said, oh, I said, well, because I knew from experience what she was after. And she wanted the free nails, basically,
Mhm.
because her nails were beautiful. There weren't, because I did say, let's go in and fix what you think is wrong with them. I offered everything to her, and she didn't want us to touch her nails, but she wanted a refund. And we offered everything to her. And it was a tough one and was a hard one. And I pushed a button, but again, I was the manager. So I
Did you
could
give
do
her a
that.
refund?
Yes. But I'm going to tell you, I basically fired her as a client.
Well,
Yes.
and I mean, I
Because
think
you know what? She
that's,
was
yeah.
that, like, that's not right scenario, but you get sometimes people, and I've heard this in today's age. Like I had a person that reached out and said, Suzanne, I want to bounce this off you. I feel like she just used me. And I said,
Mhm.
well, you're probably right. If you feel that way, listen to it. Tell me what happened. So there was pictures. She took before pictures, took immediately after treatment. And this client was saying that all of this happened to her face within hours. There's no way that would happen. It's just impossible. And she's like, thank God I took pictures.
Mhm.
But this lady went home and did something because you could see it. So there's no way your face turns like that within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And she's
And I
not
think
that happen.
that brings a
Anyways,
good point to do before and after pictures, because then you have the proof that it's not you. I think that I lost my train of thought.
I've had people who, like, generally weren't 100% happy. For example, I'll use a pedicure scenario. great service, did everything amazing, loved her. But at the end, her polishing was not very good. Like it wasn't good. And that's what the client focused on. And we were like, I won't say we were high end spa, but we weren't cheap. We weren't going in with these, keep add-ons. Like, do you want,
Mhm.
this and that to your pedicures? No, you come in for a pedicure. This is the standard you get. It's a hour and a half pedicure. And so I go, absolutely. I said, you know what? I'm really sorry you went through that. I have a few options for you. And then you see which one works. We can repaint you. Do you have time right now?
Yeah.
Or would you like to come back? And you tell me when you can come in. And if we can't fit you in, I'm going to do it for you. Now, I had staff, right? So we had a lot of people that could help out with this scenario. If you're on your own, you need to figure out how to do it. You need to follow up. That's why you should follow up always, especially a new client or new service. But then you're genuinely actually caring about that client and what's going on with them and say, you know what? I know I could have done a better job. I'm so sorry. You know what? Let me redo this for you.
Yeah. I think that's part of the, like, you want to listen to them, you want to be empathetic, you want to apologize, you want to ask questions to really understand what it is they don't, because somebody could be
Didn't they like?
like,
Yeah, they're
so
really,
it's the polish
yeah,
part, or it's, so you get the information, write it down while you're asking. And then something that you've touched on in the stories that you've told is that you've offering options for solutions, whether
yes,
it's, can we redo it for you? Would you like to come back another day and get it done? Just showing that you're willing to fix
yeah,
whatever is the
yes.
concern.
Mhm.
And like, sometimes you're not going to find the solution and they just want that refund. That's fine. It becomes part of it.
Fair.
I think
Yeah,
the most important thing is to document it so that you have a record of what happened. Because 6 months or a year down the road, if you're an independent, they can come back. You might not remember unless you have a record of what happened so that you're able to be a little bit more preventative. But I think
mhm,
too, whether or not it's that client, if write it down, and then when you have more time, go back and like kind of, what's it called? Like go over the situation and find way, how can I prevent this from happening in the future? A learning experience, right? That's really
absolutely. And
that's
it's
really
also,
important too.
yeah, so sometimes too, like, and actually this was a regular client. This was her regular client, and I don't know what happened that day. We don't know. She was surprised too, the staff member, because it happened to be at the desk where, and how was your pedicure today? It's like, oh, it's okay. And right there, it's like, you got to read that fast.
Mhm.
And I happened to be there. That's how I said, oh, oh, were your expectations not quite met? And I'm direct. You
Mhm.
just got to ask them, because then they don't, and they're like, well, no, it's not that. And they're, Suzanne, don't worry about it. I knew, see, don't worry about something's wrong. So I took her to the side and I asked her, I said, you know what? I said, your satisfaction is important to us, but also to her. Like if it was you, Doreen, I would say it would be really, Doreen wants to know, like she would never intentionally not do a good service for you, but how do we help improve? How do we do? And this is what we do here. We're going above and beyond every time. Yes, we can have an off day. We appreciate that you're willing to let it slide this time, but we don't want anything sliding.
Mhm.
So can you be specific? What part of the pedicure didn't you like? Was it rushed? Was she not gentle? I start handing out what could go. Was the massage not good? Like not herself? Was she just not herself and you could read that? Like, what is it? And just, well, I looked at the polish and I thought, it's the polish, but I wanted to hear it from her mouth. I said, so at the end, I said, how about the end results? What do you think? And she goes, well, and that's when I went, it's the polish. And she goes,
Mhm.
yeah, like, she wasn't the best. And I knew that, but I was willing to let it go. But this time it's just really, I said, yeah. I said, that's okay. I said, you know what? We can fix that. That's an easy fix if you allow us to do it, please.
Yeah.
And then I offered the time frames
Yeah.
and stuff. But you need to propose that fix, as you said, immediately, that you're willing to do it. And some clients are like, oh my God, don't even worry about it. I'm not coming back for polish. I just whatever. And then we made a note for that client because she was a regular client. I said, and I talked to the staff, and she's like, oh my God, really? I don't know what's with that polish. And I understand that. Some
Mhm.
polishes, like when they're bad polish, just say, you know what, I'm really sorry. This one's no good. I'm
Um,
having to toss it. Throw it out. Get a new one. Don't put polish drop thinner in it and whatever remedies you guys are figuring out to do. Throw the thing out. Get something new,
yeah.
newer, right? And say, I'm really sorry. I know you love that, but here's some similar colors because it's not going to go on well. You're not going to be happy.
I
And
think
I
it goes back to
have
communication, right? Like,
exactly. Yeah. And
something's
the
going
staff,
on.
that polish was terrible. I grabbed it. I said, why would you polish with this? Look, it's not even moving from the brush. Like it's
Yeah.
just terrible. So then, and actually going forward, what I did was I said, that's it. I need to figure out another solution in my head to make this better for my staff and for service purpose. So that's when I changed my whole process to pedicures and bought the little guys
Mhm.
and I included them in the service. Here you go. And this way, we got a brand new bottle every single time we worked on a client. So I wanted to change and prevent that
Learning. You learned from
happening.
that experience.
Exactly. You need to grow with it too, right? So I saw the minis and I said, that's, you're going to give that out? I said, yep. I mean, the cost is in the pedicure.
Yeah.
I put it in there. Again, business side, you guys, you got to
Yeah.
think about that. But I'm not making money on the polish. I just want to cover the cost because I have some people put it in there as making money on the polish too. But anyway, so you just really, really show genuine empathy. How do you resolve it immediately if possible? And if not immediate, when are you going to do it?
Mhm.
And then after what's important is a feedback. You follow up. So then after I knew, oh, Doreen came in to have another polishing done, the next day I called or someone had to phone. If I couldn't do it, I had reception take care of it and say I need to phone. In this day and age, I mean, a lot of people are doing texting, direct messaging through social, whatever it is that you're going to do it. And it's important. So how did it go? I said, was it better? Oh my God, it was amazing. I love this color. It looks amazing. I said, oh, so good to hear that. Thank you for letting us fix this for you.
Yeah.
It means everything to us. You have to do that. I mean, there's clients who push the button and you're not wrong. And I've been in customer service like since I was 15. And guess what? I know they're wrong, that small percent, but I will find a way for them to understand because as you say, word of mouth is huge. They're
Mhm.
going to leave and the biggest thing that happens is they're going to go and tell 10 people how bad it was.
Yeah.
But when
And I
it's
think,
really good, they don't do that. They don't
yeah.
even share their experience. It's
And
unfortunate,
yeah.
but that hasn't changed, right?
It's really not about like right or wrong, right? Because I think that at the end of the day, like I think just you just have to
Mhm.
swallow your pride and just try to make it better. And like I think you've given a few really good scenarios and that sometimes you just can't make it better and it's a refund. Or sometimes you can make it better by asking the questions. One thing I
Mhm.
really like is just acknowledging that what they're telling you isn't complaining, it's actually helping. It's feedback to make us better. It's important for, I think even as
99% of
a
the time it is. Yeah.
yeah. And as an individual, like your scenario was more staff situation, right? There's more people. But if you're on your own, it's really relaying your values to your client. Again, like it's
Mhm.
important to me that everybody leaves feeling a certain,
Yeah.
whatever your value is. And
Mhm.
so having a way that you can get that feedback, and I think first recognizing there's an issue and then finding a way that you can get
Mhm.
that feedback. But I
Do you
think
have
that
sorry, didn't
go
mean
on.
to cut you off, no. I was
Don't
just gonna
forget.
say, and I know I've talked about staff. I have scenario even myself I've been through, like, it was a client with electrolysis, and, she's, again, hair growth cycles, if you know how that works. So I'm working with that, and it's really important to get it at the anagen stage, the growing stage, and that's the optimum time to try to weaken and kill a hair. And it's no different than laser, right? And
Mhm.
this client was like, yeah, but look at this, it's coming through. And a few days later, there's some hairs. It's like you're missing them. So then I sat down with her and I said, okay, listen, I spent about a half an hour with her educating her on hair growth cycles, even though I talked about it. So I spent the time, I drew. I don't draw well, but I can do a follicle and a hair and then
Mhm.
talk about the anode. Now in today's world, you can Google it with your phone and show them, you
Yeah.
know? But giving them an understanding so they can see, and then giving them a goal, like your goal is, I'm telling you within a month you're going to see a difference, but you need to allow me the time to do it. Please trust me, I will make you happy. That's confidence too. And sometimes what that's where we're like, oh my God, but what if it doesn't happen? This is why your education is really important, and that you understand the why behind what you're doing. So whatever that service may be, a lash tech, whatever it may be, know your lashes are not going to fall off because I'm using this, and this, and so that's why it's important to understand what it is that you have maybe,
Mhm.
and then allowing the time, like maybe after you've educated them on it, follow up a couple days later and say, how are you doing? Tell me what you've noticed now, right? If they've had a bad experience. So, yeah, you know what? I noticed that, because she was a tweezer. So, and I said, well, you can tweeze every day, like 5 to 10 hairs. Do you know how many growth cycles she had? Good Lord. There was a lot of growth cycles.
Mhm.
So there's always looks like a hair, so anyways, that's one example. And I spent the time just educating her. I had her come in, I need to see. That's another one. Try not to do this through a message. If you have to do messaging, that's okay, but that also distance people. It changes
Yeah. Takes the personal
changes
connection
the
out of
whole
it.
thing if it's personal and you bring them into you to see you. Now, sometimes when they complain, say, no, I don't want to come in. That's a
Or a
hard,
phone call, because I think, like, messaging,
or at
you
least a
can
phone.
misunderstand the tone, and they can
Yeah,
misunderstand your tone. So I would
yeah,
just do a phone
exactly.
call or FaceTime,
Mhm.
whatever it is. Just
Uh,
find a way that not to lose the context and the tone in what you're trying to, because people
So
read things
true.
the way they want to they want to
So true,
feelings
Doreen.
they're having.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that, especially today's world, because everything's a message.
Yeah.
Who does
Yeah.
phone calls anymore?
Yeah.
Not too many, right? So it's always a message. But yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. But yeah, so
Well,
I think, you know what? Listen, apologize, offer solutions immediately, work with your client and yourself, of course. If you're really busy, it might be hard, but figure out how you're going to help them with the solution, and then follow up after a couple days later or something. Just see if you did do the fix or the offering of a redo or whatever it may be. Then, like if it's a facial and you can't do another facial right away, what can you do for them?
yeah.
Or offer the next time they're in, let me make a note, let's book your next facial, because not always can you repeat the service. And I
Yeah.
understand that too, right? But yeah, I think that's the big one. But
Yeah.
you can change that negative experience to a positive, and I think that's the goal for
Mhm.
you and them. I don't know about you, but when someone complains about me and my service, I'm like, oh my God, but I thought I rocked. Like I
Mhm.
nailed that. And then you find out you didn't. It's like, oh, what did I do wrong? And you're in your own head thinking, how do I fix this? What could have I done better? What is it that, you know? And I think that's a part. And a big one is learning. Take it as constructive criticism,
Yeah.
because again, what, 99% of the time it's going to be okay. But
Well, and I think if you have a system to follow, like the suggestions we've given, you make them your own, but then
mhm,
you can have something to lean on because sometimes it can be emotional for you. It's hard not to take it personally sometimes,
yeah.
but if you have something to fall back on to help guide you through the process where you can, and like you said, like it is a learning experience. The more experience you have, the more you become aware that this isn't always 100% something you did, but it's a whole situational thing. And that becomes part of, I always like having things to fall back on so I don't have to think of anything on the spot. I have something
Mhm,
prepared and that's what I pull out, even if it's like filed in my mind, but I have it prepared and that's what I pull out when
mhm.
a certain situation happens.
Yes. So
I'd be interested if
mine,
any of our listener readers, any of
oh,
our listeners have their own stories and solutions that they can share with us, right?
yeah,
To hear
absolutely.
to
It's a
hear
different
how
world.
others have done it.
It's a different world today, and people are, you just don't know what's going to trigger someone today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, sometimes you could do everything right and you just can't figure out what went wrong, and they're just being ridiculous. Sometimes it's not even the service, or it's them.
Yeah.
whatever's going on in their life could be part of it. And sometimes they admit it. I was just having a really bad day that day. It wasn't that bad at all. It was just my headspace at the time. Even that, I still said, well, we still need to do something for you.
I think it's still like regardless of the situation though, the steps would still be the same. Like if you just go through the steps of like listening, apologizing, and finding a solution,
Hmm.
and then following up,
Following
documenting
up.
everything. Those
Mhm.
are, you can apply that to any situation when it comes to an unhappy or dissatisfied client, and then
Yeah,
figuring out how, the solution is where you can get creative. And that would be very specific to the incident, but I think that the steps are going to be the same. So it's something you can have in your back pocket.
absolutely. And if you're not sure and you're on your own, you do a scenario with someone.
Yeah.
I used to do it with staff when they were a little quieter, a little more timid, right? And I said, okay, we're gonna do some training because it was a training thing. So I could see what this person is, oh my God, this poor thing's gonna like break down and cry because they're just here to do service and they want to make the client feel good. And I understand that's what we all got into it for. But
Mhm.
man, some people are gonna eat you alive. So I
Yeah.
do a scenario based. Okay, I'm going to be a really not a nice client to you. So let's do this. Like what? So yeah. So we role model, like role played.
And when you work
Oh,
alone, like, you can find a friend to do that with,
exactly.
or you
Or
can
someone
ask
in the
Chat GPT
yeah,
to do it with you.
AI.
Yeah, I
You
think
know what?
yeah,
If you have someone else, a colleague, someone maybe they don't even do the same service as you, but they can pretend everyone's had this situation.
yeah,
So, or your mentor,
for sure.
there's a lot of ways. We'll do it.
Yeah, call Suzanne, she'll help you.
Sure. I'm always here for you guys.
Amazing. Okay, well, I think we've covered what we needed to share in this episode, and hopefully we will hear back from our listeners on some stories that they've had. Thanks for listening to Beauty Babble.